Oh, yes. Hear the smooth saxophone intonations. This could be another clue as to the author that we're adding today.
Setting the mood for today.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we are. So we are live. As always, let the internet pipes get warmed up as everybody's coming in to join us, and grab a seat, grab a glass of rosé. I don't even know what's like in the mood. I don't know, champagne? Let's go with champagne.
Champagne might be the best one, yeah.
Okay, that's probably
or a smooth red wine.
Some sort of silky red wine, a buttery Chardonnay. I don't know. It could be anything. So, just making sure that we're getting through all the pipes of the internet. So let me just double check something here. Oh, all right. It looks like we are streaming on all platforms. We are ready to go. All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to pause that music for us now. So welcome, everybody. We are live in the AutoCrit studios worldwide, the worldwide AutoCrit studios. It's Beth from AutoCrit, and I'm here with Gareth today. Say hi, Gareth.
International man of mystery reporting in. Hello.
Literally, so much mystery, so much mystery. The next mystery we want to talk about is coming up soon. You'll see it on your screen there. Today we are doing What's the Score? So as you know, with What's the Score, we take an author's best-selling book and run it through the paces of AutoCrit. Every month in the AutoCrit platform, we add a brand new author, and then we'll take that author's best-selling book, one of them. It's a dealer's choice as to which one we choose. And by the dealer is Gareth, of course, because he does all of the digging and all of the dissection of those best-selling novels, runs it through all of our reports, and comes up with some really fascinating and interesting facts around how that author's work compares to some of our standards around things like showing versus telling or adverbs in dialogue. Gareth will have a whole host of great information for us today. And what we want to start off with, Gareth, what is going on with this What's the Score logo? I know there are clues here. Tell me what I'm seeing.
Well, if anybody watching, you were privy to our teaser email, I think that was either last week or the week before, you may have noticed a few clues, and I'll speak them out for anybody who didn't see it. But the background of the image was Jacksonville, Florida.
Ah, okay.
There was also the USA Today, I believe, best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, the logo for BET, the BET network in America, Black Entertainment Television, and the logo for Passion Flicks, which, while looking into this author, I discovered is actually a service that seems to be Netflix for romance.
Which I kind of love. I feel like if you've watched all of the Lifetime and Hallmark movies, then maybe Passion Flicks is your next stop there. I thought this looked like Florida. I used to live in Florida, so I thought, wait a minute, that looks really familiar. Is it going to be Carl Hyacin, whom I love? I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I never quite know. By the way, in our audience, if you have guesses as to who this will be, put them in the chat. Let's hear your guesses. We'd like to see that from North Georgia, from Canada, from California, from Florida. Oh, maybe this is your neighbor in Florida. Well,
I'm guessing it's obvious enough, I think, that it's a romance author, including our intro music there with our sexy saxophone.
Sexy saxophone really made it not... it rules out all of my other guesses. The BET thing ruled some out. The Passion Flicks, the saxophone music at the start. If Homer Simpson fans will get that saxophone reference. So I'm out of guesses.
Let's see. Anybody out there in YouTube or Facebook land got a guess?
Anybody got a guess out there?
I don't want to risk it.
I don't know. I think we should. Oh, where's my drum roll sound? I'm just going to make it for you normal. All right. And this month's author is. See, and there's the big. I was doing the drum roll, but now I have to do the one.
No, you have to change it.
Okay, Gareth, you're on drum roll patrol while I get this screen changed. Oh, it's a little bit of a letdown there. Okay, here we go. It's Brenda Jackson, a very prolific and highly acclaimed romance author. Love her. And she's had a few of her books turned into movies, even outside of BET and Passion Flicks, I believe. So just a fantastic author and such a great read. It's for me, very easy to digest, very accessible. We talked about the reading scores. So I'm interested to see how those come through for Brenda Jackson. I've really enjoyed her work. So very interested to see what her score is. Without further ado then.
Let's get into it. So as with most of these What's the Scores, the live ones, I've kind of prepped all of the reports already. So we'll just sort of skip through them one by one and look at anything that could be interesting to you all.
All right.
Of course, Brenda Jackson, super prolific author. She's published over 100 books, won many, many awards, bestseller lists all over the place. So I think if you're a romance fan, you've definitely heard of her. And first of all, I've scrolled this one down a little bit because we're going to begin, as always, with the overall summary score for general fiction. 73.51.
Okay.
And again, this is the kind of thing that you might think is a little low, but as we go through the different reports, you'll find it isn't really. Plenty of books that we've looked at have fallen into the sort of low to mid 70s. But as we know, they're already best-selling books, so it's not a judgment of their quality whatsoever.
I mean, this in the mid 70s range is pretty standard for a lot of the authors that we run through this. What's the score?
Yeah, we'll find out a little more about that later, but it's all in the data set. We'll see that in a little bit. But first of all the things I've got lined up for you folks, we're going to start with dialogue tags. I always love to start with dialogue. And if we look in this particular book, which was called One Special Moment, there are quite a lot of dialogue tags. But, good with said and asked the most frequent.
I feel like in romance, we may see dialogue tags more frequently because it is truly the story of the interaction as opposed to, a war story or a different genre may have different thresholds. Is that what you see, Gareth, as well? Or
yes, absolutely. Especially with certain authors kind of comparing to their own styles. If they tend to write with lots of characters, and romance is a genre that delves into that quite a lot because it's all about the relationship between the characters. So of course there's going to be lots of dialogue. They're going to be talking. As you said, it's not like a sci-fi actioner or a war story or something that's all about the set pieces. It's more intimate.
Yes.
Looking at the most frequent dialogue tags, we actually have said is the most frequent, but it's not overused. If you're kind of a new AutoCrit user or not too on par with what all of this means, the highlight when it's red essentially means that the system has detected it's overused compared to the usual content of, in this case, general fiction, just the mash together of all the fiction books that we've ever put into the system. So we have said, not overused, that's good. Asked, even though, it's generally preferred that you have said and asked, it is a little overused, so we'll see how much. And then we have these other ones like replied, whispered, answered. Turned is not overused, even though it's there, and it's not said and asked. And then we have stated and snapped, which is quite a good one.
Sounds like a quarrel, little lover's quarrel there.
So if we look at, let's say, replied, remove about 16. Whispered, remove about 12. Stated is one that's not very common at all, so we've got the vast majority of those recommended for removal. Again, T's cut in half. These little things where you have to remove 1, remove 4, they're quite simple things to do. And there's asked, which we have 72 of, but remove about 17. Snapped, funnily enough, 5, but only remove about 1. So it's generally a good result if you only have small numbers for removal. And if you do, I looked through it. I could click on chuckled here.
Chuckled.
Colby chuckled. I don't need an
S. That has to be an unusual one.
That's actually fine. I would read that and think that's fine. Characters chuckling, so don't worry about that. But this is where if you have like 1 to remove, 2 to remove, use your own judgment. Just go through and see. Sometimes when you have quite a big amount, you don't really need. So sometimes asked, it's not necessary when the question is literally punctuated as a question. That could just be a single line. Not so much in this example because that's both men asked simultaneously. They're both talking. But if it was a single person, it could just be what company, and then the other person responds. That's an easy way to cut down your dialogue tags. And in the same vein of dialogue, let's have a look at adverbs in dialogue, because they're a little more frowned upon than just a selection of alternative dialogue tags. So if we check what we have here, with 23% of dialogue tags contain an adverb. That seems quite high compared to other books that we've looked at. And this being a romance novel, I guess it's not too hard to see that the most common one is softly. We have softly, finally, and quietly are not overused. They seem to be fine. We can leave them alone. But we have huskily, which is one I'm not too fond of myself. Nervously, truthfully, smoothly, calmly. There's lots of alternatives here. And the general rule really is kind of keeping these out of your dialogue, attached to dialogue tags, because you're really just telling the reader that someone's angry or that someone's, calm. And when all of that can be delivered inside the dialogue, what they say is more important, can contain how they say it. For example, there's huskily here that stood out to me. It's 6, remove about 5. So people do use the word huskily. It's quite an unusual word. So I would say use it judiciously and sparingly, perhaps. AutoCrit and the best-selling novels we're comparing this against agree. Yeah, thankfully, when you click through and jump through, it doesn't seem to be for such a kind of uncommon word. It's not actually caught with repetition too much. Although you'll notice here we do have, he asked huskily, and then very close to that, he asked in a deeper, huskier voice. So it's maybe repetitious there. But hey, if huskiness is what you're going for, then it might be fine for your story.
Sure.
But that's our result here for adverbs and dialogue, 90 total with a 23% attachment. Moving on from that, I lined up next filler words, everybody's favorite. And this one goes right into the red. We're
oh my goodness,
full excess here. So remove about 211. That's quite a number. We have 799 that. I think everybody ends up with that. It's either that or just that's always on the top. And I think that just affects everybody.
That is my filler word.
It always is. And for example, we have the opening right here. This would be the biggest gamble of life. That was Colby Wingate's very thought. And, that's fine. You don't need to change that. There's a definite just kind of narrative tone to that. It sounds like the author just kind of reading it, saying it into your ear, which is perfectly fine. So what you just want to look for is things like this. Maybe that isn't really necessary, because if you just take it out, she studied his features and decided, although Denzel Washington, it doesn't affect the sentence. It's still perfectly understandable and legible. So little things like that can go. It may be a few cups of coffee to get through 89 of them and decide, well, let's now say 89, 799, and decide where those 89 might come from. But, as we always say, you are in charge here. So don't feel like you're shackled to your chair and have to get rid of 89 of them. If they make sense and it reads fine, then they can stay. It's not always fully necessary. Very is another one.
Very helpful.
You see it showing up like here. The reason that very is kind of frowned upon is because it's it's kind of seen as a a generic descriptor or a little bit of a weasel word, like it's very big. You could describe something much better than saying it's very big. However, in this book, this is very important to Sterling. This is within dialogue. So whenever I'm looking through a book or doing any edits of my own, I'm always kind of pushing dialogue to the side. Characters are going to talk like characters are going to talk. And that's perfectly fine. The system might see the word in there, but that's because it's a computer. And you can just choose to ignore that. So I would ignore dialogue to begin with and look for the filler that you can pull out of the prose, and then go back and do a bit of dialogue if it's a bit overblown. So filler words, we are up in the red. Some work to do there. Moving on, we have adverbs in general. You might think total 954. That might seem like a lot, but not really. We're sitting on a good compared to general fiction, of course. One thing I did want to point out, because the written version of this, the article version, will go live today as well. If you're editing your own book and you kind of are sitting at the average level, don't consider average to be sort of painfully average in the negative sense. Considering all of this data that your writing is being compared to are literally best-selling books worldwide from famous authors that have more than made it. You're in very good company if you're in sitting in the average, so don't beat yourself up about that. You can certainly try to pull towards the great, but if you're around average, you're already doing really well. Looking here, most frequent adverbs, we have suddenly, really is not overused, slowly, completely, totally, immediately, and then we kind of taper off there. Removals are actually quite, a decent number here. So for totally, it's like we want to take that right down to 3 from 23. But once more, you can click through and see here. I couldn't help but notice her perfume was totally alluring. I'm not a romance writer, but is there a way that totally alluring could be turned into a single word that hits hard there? Maybe. I'm not going to think about it on the fly because I don't write romance and it would be awful.
Well, you're a horror writer. I think that would be kind of difficult.
I don't use the word alluring too often. So things like, Colby said nervously. Is there a way that rather than saying that they're saying something nervously, that his nervousness could be made obvious through his behavior? These are the kind of little tweaks that you might think about. Sometimes that's not the right way to go because it would lead to what we call purple prose, where you're just overwriting everything and overwriting these details that aren't really too necessary for that moment. So it's something to keep in mind. But yeah, that's the result for One Special Moment's adverbs. I think in this same selection, yes, showing versus telling. So this is always an interesting one. The showing versus telling indicators are also up in the red here. This is always a tough one to deal with when you're editing your own books as well, because as we explain quite often, I think during these presentations and the shows, is that the showing versus telling are indicators. When we at AutoCrit refer to indicators, it's all of the research, all of the data, all the things we've put together inside the algorithm and everything, is that these are indicators that things may be a case of X. So it's not necessarily always 100% on the money. Whereas we have words like it could be an indicator, but it's also a super common word, which is why at 659, it's still not overused. So not something that we really need to look at immediately. But we do have overuse for no, and that's sort of sandwiched in here between there and could. The reason no is seen as a showing versus telling indicator is that the word itself, the author could just be telling the reader that a character knows something, rather than having that character express it themselves, or to have it expressed through the character's actions or speech. And the reader, it's much more involving if, as the reader, you're allowed to infer that and just kind of extract that information yourself without being directly told. And so there's our numbers. We have about 68 removal there, 73.
Do you find, Gareth, that the showing versus telling is more pronounced in a character-centric or dialogue-heavy book?
It probably would be. That's not something that I've actually gone through and compared. I could do that. I think we've got enough of the what's the scores on the blog and everything. We could go through with an eye and see how they actually compare depending on the story. That's a good thought, but not something that I've looked at. But I would assume that's probably true when you're dealing a lot more with character interaction.
Right.
That it's going to crop up more.
Yeah, because they literally do have to tell each other things. So
yeah,
maybe that is a bit of it. We do a quick question, and I'm curious about this as well. A quick question from the community. How would this score change if we were to compare this to romance instead of general fiction? Are you getting to that later, or?
Yeah, that's coming up.
Oh, I'm just jumping the gun. Okay.
hold on your hats.
We talked about that, and we were going to get to it later, but I just wanted to ask some very, very curious.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there shortly. Things like this, you've got his creation. How do you figure that? I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing. That's dialogue. So I wouldn't really do anything with that. Obviously, we're not going to sit on the show and look at every single word and dissect the entire manuscript. You'd have to do that on your own, but there's the principles to look out for, really. And this one seems pretty good for it. Up next is pacing. I wanted to show this because it was quite funny when I saw it. So 3.25% of paragraphs with slow pacing, and that's a really good result. Like we have pretty much no red here filling up our dial. It's all good. But if we look at the pacing graph, I was just like, whoa, we've got this one huge paragraph there in the middle. What you kind of like to see is a decent variation, what I like to call the roller coaster effect, is it's kind of going up and down as your paragraphs and sentences are varying in length, keeping things interesting. And within the system, these little red ones are kind of the slower points that have been determined. So you might want to look for, see, like here, we've got a large block with a number of paragraphs there. So you might want to look at that kind of thing and see whether the story is slowing down unnecessarily there. However, if you imagine a 3-arc story, that might be falling in around the second act switch, potentially, depending on the way the story is laid out, because they're not all going to be totally universal. But it's quite common to see slower pacing happen for a short period at the change of an arc, one of the plot arcs or act. I keep saying arc. 3 acts. So once you change act, you'll probably slow down a bit, and that's not necessarily a problem, but something you could look at. But this, I was like, whoa, one gigantic paragraph. So I wanted to see what that was, and helpfully enough, we have our paragraph variation report, which you can run. And I think I've left it on the wrong tab. I did. You can actually find all your paragraphs sort of by length brought out, and it wasn't hard to just scroll down and find that one right there. 294 word paragraph.
Wow.
And finding it's helpfully marked in red here for us to get our attention. And it's actually not bad. It's just somebody reading out the contents of an article, except it's all been bunched into one big block. So maybe you could just split that in half if you wanted to make it less like a kind of wall of text.
The wall of text, yes.
Because I could imagine that the kind of visual appearance on the page of a small paperback might look a bit out of place or imposing.
When I see that in a paperback or even on my Kindle, it's not interesting. I find it difficult to kind of keep my place. Sometimes I read that one a few times over.
What surrounds it here as well is all kind of snappy,
yes,
quick stuff, and then you've just got this boom wall. So something that is not necessarily bad. I mean, the pacing of the book looks great. So maybe just a little tweak, break it in the middle, continue the speech just for the sake of, I guess, visual appeal. Next section, I've probably given that away already. That was having a look at the word frequency. Word frequency kind of ties into repetition, is what you want to look out for. You'll find here in this book that it's character names. Through and through, character names are the most commonly used words in this book, and it's literally dwarfing everything else around it. That's not necessarily helpful for you if this were your own manuscript. Maybe you're happy that you say you're using character names because it's necessary. There's lots of character interaction. Again, this is a romance. There's going to be loads of talk of characters. So what I did was I went into the settings here, inside AutoCrit, where you can exclude words. So you can pop in a list of things that you want to remove from the reports. And I reran it. Sorry, I'll show you the phrase frequency first as well. Again, lots of character stuff. So I went in and I excluded some of the names like Sterling, Hamilton, Colby, Wingate. I excluded these big ones and ran it again.
Oh.
Sadly, I did not see James or Kyle or Edward, so all these names showed up again. And I did not exclude the modifier there, Sterling's. But we have Gaze being caught there. I guess Shino, I don't know if that's just another name. Hers, Kiss, although, Company. And when these words, when you take away the character names and you see not so common words showing up really, really large, that's a good opportunity to then move your way to the repetition reports and check for repeated words. Because if a word that's unusual, let's just say it was sort of company, and it turned out that we were repeating that over and over and over again, that's a good way to do it. So if on your first run with word frequency, you find it's all like character based, try excluding them, run it again, and you can really dial in on the stuff that you might need to pay attention to. That's just a little tip.
Yes, absolutely. I hadn't thought about excluding character names from the word frequency cloud, but in a dialogue heavy book, in a character centric book, it makes a lot of sense. I love that.
Yep. Next up, initial names and pronouns, because I know people are interested in this one as well. Simply because we don't have a comparative check to say whether this is good or great or average. We just go by the data from what we personally explore, and this one bang on 50%. So,
and that was when we did the deep dive live on this, that was pretty average, right? The average is somewhere between 40 and 55%. Is that, do I remember that correctly?
Yeah, somewhere between 40 and 55 sounds about right. I think the previous book that we did not too long ago went a bit higher into the 50s, like 57 or something, but that's an outlier. You don't tend to see above going too far above 50.
So this is right on.
So just so people know, this is the percent of sentences containing an initial pronoun and name, as it says there. So 50% of sentences in the book are starting with a pronoun or a name. This isn't always necessarily bad. You just want to keep an eye out to see whether you're repeating too often, like she, he. This is fine. Yeah, we'll get back to the Michael Jackson.
Yay! That joke is on.
There's a good use of it here, like for a romance novel, especially as she studied his features. Again, this is the phrase that we looked at earlier, but his eyes, his face, his slightly arched nose. It's just kind of using that repetition to give you like what she's thinking of, noticing different parts of his, of his build. And that really works. You kind of feel that infatuation setting in, which is really good.
I thought the same thing when I read that section. I thought, oh, that repetition is really nice. It's serving a very good purpose here. So as our listeners are thinking about how these reports apply to their own work, think about, repetition isn't always bad, and adverbs aren't always bad. Just make sure that it works for your scene and for your novel or your book. This I thought was just a gorgeous example of kind of going through his eyes, his face, yeah.
Use them responsibly, and we'll help you notice when you're not. Really, but otherwise, no, good. 50%. That's kind of in line with what we expect. Going along the same lines, I looked at sentence starters. This is when the sentences are starting with an ing verb or the conjunctions, and 11.62%. You'll have to forgive me. I did not remember to look back at our other what's the scores to kind of compare that to the previous ones. It feels like it might be slightly higher than those, but I don't think a 50% plus this, is really too much for any kind of novel. The only thing you really want to look out for, I think, when you're doing these, obviously, if your percentage is extremely high on this one, that might be a concern. But you're looking for these ing words, like taking a deep breath, because what you don't want to do is start sentences with actions that are impossible simultaneously. I think we've spoken about this before. It's an easy trap to fall into. This one is fine. Taking a deep breath to settle the feeling of butterflies. You walked inside the spacious room. You can take a deep breath while you walk inside a room.
But I remember the example we did on a previous Deep Dive Live. It was the ketchup and hot dog, and he shook the ketchup and he poured it on his hot dog, and you cannot in science do those two things exactly simultaneously. So.
Yeah, I mean, you could shake the open bottle, but it's probably not going to go very well. But those are very simple traps to fall into. It's kind of like opening the door or closing the door. He did something, reached for something, and just these kind of physical actions that can't possibly happen at the same time. Watch out for those. So that's what this report is very good for as well. You can see the full list of the starters and where you've used them, and you can just kind of see that. Very handy. But no, one special moment gets a thumbs up from me on this regard anyway.
Great.
Next, power words. I am going to let people guess what they think the top emotional power words are in this book.
Yes. So
so you can see them here. We have general words: fear, encouragement, lust, anger, greed, safety, the forbidden, and energetic. And let's just say, we usually have in a book 3 major emotional threads. So I'll give everybody a moment to guess what they think those might be in one special moment.
One special moment. I am going to say, well, okay. I overthink these way too much, but here's where I'm going. Okay, lust, obviously, because it's a romance. I am going to go forbidden, because when we took out the 2 main character names, the name James popped up, and I feel like there might be something with Colby and James there. I see. Obviously, coming in from the audience, definitely lust. I see a lot of votes for lust, but I'm going forbidden. And let's see, what would a third one be? Because I feel like she's usually quite good at having 3. Gosh. We said snapped a lot earlier, right? Didn't we?
There was snapped showing up.
So maybe anger.
Okay. Well,
that's the final answer. Those are my 3. And I think the community is kind of agreeing with me. I see a lot of guesses. So.
Well, anybody who said lust, of course, you're absolutely correct. We start the saxophone music again because
that song's already going to be stuck in my head. Just like
the biggest slice of our pie here is, of course, lust. We have lust, encouragement, and fear.
Big finish.
And you might think, looking at this, that it's an odd spread for a romance, but it's not at all. Of course, we have the huge amount of lust. The encouragement is that kind of the reason we call it encouragement is that kind of feel good factor. These power words, this power word report, when you look at it, it's almost like a map of how the book makes you feel. And this kind of encouragement, it's the feel good, the pick me up factor. And any good drama also has a good dose of fear, because fear isn't all about horror and scares and monsters and ghosts. It's the fear of losing someone. It's feeling awful, as you would expect. You know, a lot of these romance books are the sort of girl meets boy, girl and boy get together, girl and boy fall out, then they come back again. And you always have that sort of fearful area where things are falling apart.
No, it's what brings that tension into the novel, right? Otherwise, it would just be a boring story if nothing cliffhanging or emotion evoking happened.
Yeah, that wouldn't be very interesting.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's it's a really good example of what you might see in a pure romance novel. I think it's a perfect kind of split.
Yeah, very good. I do see my forbidden is in there, so there's
yes, it is represented.
Who is this James character?
So a lot of these as well, when I mentioned fear, not being all about horror, and again, the encouragement is that feel good, pick me up. It's all about how you're using the words, what words you're choosing. We've said this before in the big deep dive live we did on the power words. you can use two different words to say the same thing, but they don't necessarily have the same emotional anchors behind them. And this is kind of being aware of the word choices you're making and how they are anchored to emotions. Lust, for example, I think if we go back to the power words, there's quite a lot of lust that shows up in the likes of Treasure Island, I think, and stuff like that. It's not necessarily sexy lust. It's all the lust also includes lust for power, lust for gold. That's also kind of tied into greed. But there's different ways that these can be interpreted. And that's just a great split. Really great split.
I'm not supposed to have a favorite, but I love power words, not just because of my last name, but also because it's such a great visual, and it really does underscore the fact that your word selection in some cases really matters a lot. Words mean things, and not only do words mean things outright, but that undercurrent, that undertone is also very important when you're trying to convey an emotion. So I love the power words.
Exactly right. So when it comes to power words, these words don't literally just mean the definition. They're also things under the surface tied to them, and choosing wisely. If you see a split like this and that's what you're going for, then you've done a great job.
Yeah, great.
Finally, I don't want to keep people too long. We looked at the readability, which we spoke about.
I think that was maybe just last week.
Was it last week? I don't know. Time is just flying at the
It
moment.
has no meaning anymore. So.
I could barely even believe that this was another month that we're adding a new author. I was like,
we just do this.
Wasn't Karen Slaughter just like 2 weeks ago?
It feels like it.
But here we are. And there'll be another one next month, folks. And I'm sure that'll feel like 5 days for us.
Especially the things we have going on in the next month, which we'll talk about in a minute.
If you're unsure about readability statistics, I would say pop onto our YouTube channel, go back and watch the previous deep dive live we did on readability, where we went through sort of what all of these mean and where they're best applied. I prefer the flesh reading ease, and we're sitting at a 79 here. We do tend to find that most mass market paperbacks and authors, they'll generally aim between 70 and higher. The higher you go in flesh reading ease, kind of quote unquote, the better or more accessible your reading is. So it's not too complicated. People don't get tripped up and things like that. Absolutely. So sitting on, what's that? Sorry.
You said a 79, did you say, of the flesh reading ease?
It is 79.
So that is right between 7th grade level, which is like fairly easy to read, and at 80 she would cross over into easy to read conversational English for consumers is an 80. So she is right there. Very, very accessible book.
Yeah, pretty much right on the spot there. I think that that 80 is where most people seem to aim, because that is considered general conversational English. You're not using complex words, and so sometimes it's unavoidable. You have to, depending on your story, but generally do things like shorten sentences or just switch out some complex words to bring this back up again.
It's my utilize and use example again.
Let's leave the corporate stuff out.
Or leverage. No.
If we go back, that's everything I've gone through here for this particular novel, for this show. But I do want to go back to the comparison. So if we skip back to the beginning here, we had our summary score of 73.51. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is when compared to general fiction. Now, there's one thing I want to kind of put a twist on this today, because when we add a new author to the system, I'm sure many of you watching know this, it then goes into our database selection, so you can compare your writing to the style of every author that we add into the system for you. When I ran, I was running Brenda's books through, I think I ran about 5 or 6 of them, different books, checking the summary scores, and they all, for general fiction, fell in this sort of 73, 74, 75 arena, which was fairly consistent. Sometimes you don't see that with authors because, as I say, they never write the same book twice. Some get a bit experimental at stages in their careers, and it gets a little weird. But this was very, very consistent. So what I did was just for the kind of final big reveal here. If we go now to authors.
Can we do her to romance as well? Are you going to do that?
We can do. Yes. I'll check the romance. don't think there's a big shift for romance.
Oh.
But
That's great, because having it, I know we always see a little bit of a tweak when we compare to the more specific genre. Oh.
we do. So for romance, we're up to 76.
Mm-hmm.
0.23. So we've got a bit of a bump there. That's always a good thing to look out for.
That's a nice bump. That's nearly 3 whole points.
Yeah, as long as you're moving up.
I don't math. That's a lot of points. That is many points. I'm going to just stop mathing.
So yeah, keep it moving up. Nothing earth-shattering in terms of the change, but again, authors have their very own styles, which we'll see here. So yeah, when you're in the system, as long as you're a pro user, pop onto your authors now, and there's Brenda right there with her sort of bio and a few book examples. So you can set your text comparison to Brenda.
And this is comparing this current work to all of the other work that we have in our database for Brenda Jackson, yes?
Correct.
Wow.
That was a very surprising difference.
She is very steady Eddie, very consistent then.
So I think so far in what we've done here for What's the Scores, the biggest jump was Jerry Jenkins, who leapt over into the 90s with a huge difference. But this going from the initial score to compared to the author, that's a jump of over 10. If you consider a percent, even let's just say the jump of over 10% up into 84 is excellent. So she seems to be a very, very consistent author. And I guess you get that way when you're writing publishing over 100 books and winning awards, and everybody loves your stuff, and there's movies being made.
Oh my goodness.
Consistency gets you there.
Yes.
So no, it was a great final score for her, just to sort of compare to herself. So if you wanted to write a romance and you thought you could write like Brenda Jackson, use what you've seen here and have a go.
Yeah, I think as a reader, when I think about how consistent she is, I know that I enjoy the way she writes, and I know I'm going to have a good experience with every book of hers that I pick up at this point, right? Because she writes in a way that really resonates with me. So it's very easy if you just need to pick up a quick book in the airport. Heaven help us. I hope we all get back there soon. But if you just need to grab a quick book, you're going to have a good experience with the writers that are very consistent, and they have a very loyal following and a very loyal fan base. That obviously with all her time on New York Times bestseller list, for example.
Yeah. Well, as I said, I'm not a romance writer or reader really, but sort of going through the book, it's very easy to.
That shocks me that you're not a big reader.
It's very easy to sort of hear Brenda's voice through the writing, and I think that kind of jump when compared to herself proves that she's definitely got a voice of her own. That's made of the words that she uses, and it's all borne out in the system. And the excerpts that I was reading were perfectly pleasant to read. Again, maybe the material's not for me, but certainly the writing was great.
Gareth scores it low on terror and horror. These are not in the romance, maybe not everybody's wheelhouse, but I enjoy a good romance now and then. But I also enjoy a good terrifying suspense novel now and then as well. A couple of questions from the community around, what numbers should we really be shooting for? So I want to go back to the start of our conversation today, Gareth, and that very first comparison, she was against general fiction in the 70s, right? And that's what we've seen a lot of our What's the Score results coming in around that level. Talk a little bit about kind of what it means to be in the 70s against a general fiction, or even in the high 70s and 80s or so against a more specific genre. What does that really mean, and what should people be shooting for?
Yeah, well, a simple way to kind of tie that back. okay, not so simple, but the
There's no simple way.
yeah, it's nothing really simple. The overall algorithm, if we're talking about general fiction, is the all the novels, millions and millions of books that are fiction books in the system. Also the same for the general nonfiction. It's all kind of mashed together, ripped apart by Skynet, and put
Train
into
your robot.
put into these data sets. Now, if you consider that in terms of the use of power words, let's say, where we run that report and we can see the emotional landscape of the book based on the words that are being used, your book may compare more favorably in terms of word use to Brenda Jackson if you're writing with the same kind of emotional language. But it also goes into filler words, how many times one would expect to see the word that in a Brenda Jackson novel versus how many you have. That all ties in across all the many of the reports, all of the comparative reports anyway, to sort of guide you. And the higher you are, the closer you are to the word use of that either genre or the work of the writing style of that author.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, insofar as how it's been picked apart and analyzed by the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
So no two authors write exactly the same. What you should aim for, I know this is always a question. I say progress without losing sight of your own story or book if you're writing nonfiction. Don't let the system bully you into removing things that you don't want to remove just because you want to get a couple of extra points. If you start in the 70s, I'd maybe try to push it to 80. But again, maybe in this book, I'm being all experimental and I think it's super cool that I'm just using all these crazy words. And yeah, there's your 4 options. If you see a highlight, you can replace it with something else. Remove it if it's just a filler word. You might decide to reword that section to sort of get rid of that uncommon word that's pulling down your readability, or reject the suggestion from AutoCrit. Just say, no, I like that, and I'm not going to listen to you.
Yeah, no.
And you can, if you choose to do that, you can untick the word in the sidebar and it won't show highlighted in your manuscript anymore. So you can kind of push that to the side and go, right, I've had enough of removing them. So let's say it's filler words and it says you need to remove 75 justs. You managed to get rid of 35, but you're kind of happy with the rest. Just untick just. And, just untick just. But untick just, it won't show there anymore. And you can be happy in your own knowledge that you've done the job.
Absolutely. And a lot of our users have really been able to employ this summary score as a benchmark and then use that compare files feature to pull up kind of the very first draft and then pull up what they believe is kind of closer to their final draft and do the compare and see side by side what progress you've made in what areas, because those 2 summary reports side by side will show you the progress you've made in all the areas that you want to make progress in, right? So it's not about getting to a 95, although like if you're like me, like you get hung up on the numbers. I want to get a good score. I want to get a 95, but it's really about improvement and letting the platform work for you. So looking across your 100,000 words to find patterns that it might take a human 100 years to recognize or never, or you or your beta readers may not see it, but a computer will, other readers will, etc. Just keep leveraging. Oh my goodness, I did it, didn't I? Using the platform to help you identify areas that you may want to go and tighten up, and then just see your improvement by showing that compare files with your summary report score going up, or different aspects of your fingerprint going up or down. Kind of seeing where you land as the creative force behind all the work that you're running through AutoCrit, for sure.
Yeah, indeed. It's all about attention, just pulling your attention where it may be needed. But yeah, I think the best way to put it, as I kind of did there, is don't let the system bully you. You're in charge.
You are.
So you make the decisions. And if you don't like what's suggested, then don't do it. The last thing you want when using it, of course, it's wonderful to help you clean things up and get that overview of like the power words, which we all love. But don't ever get to the point where you're not liking what you're doing anymore.
Yeah,
what's the point then?
Absolutely. The primary goal is to have fun and create a work that you are pleased with and you're proud of, So don't let the computer bully you. I love that. I love that.
Great question, Bruce. I think Kevin's on that one. Do you know which book
Mhm.
in the database scores closest to 100 against general fiction? I do not, but I think we'll pull that data and have a look.
Boy, that is going to be really
It would be interesting.
Against general fiction. Boy, that's a lot. That's going to be a lot of data to score a 95 or 100 or closest to 100. That'll be interesting. Just a quick reminder. So the What's the Score that Gareth just took you through will be live on our blog momentarily. It might already be, the magic of the internets. So check that out, autocrit.com/WTS to get to all of the What's the Score in our blog, or just navigate over to our blog at autocrit.com, and this will be front and center, top of the list for you. Our What's the Score from, and I always, oops, let me take that banner down. Brenda Jackson, her book, One Special Moment, just a delight, very prolific author, and from what I understand, a really nice lady. So fantastic time. I mentioned earlier, you may want to think about how these What's the Score sections and segments and reports apply to your own work. Now, several of the reports that Gareth walked us through today are only available to our professional level users. So if you are a free forever user, you may not currently have access to all of these reports. I know the adverb report is free, but I think the adverbs and dialogue might not be free. Summary report, obviously always free. But if you are curious and you are not yet a professional member, let us know. Either through the blue bubble in the bottom right-hand corner of our application window. That's our support team standing by ready to help you. Or you can visit this link, autocrit.com/DDL for Deep Dive Live, and grab that pro trial 14-day upgrade for just $1. And that'll give you 14 days of access to all the reports that Gareth walked us through today, plus all the rest that are in the application. There are over 30. So feel free to grab this $1 upgrade offer. Check it out. You will, in my opinion, definitely want to then stay a professional member. And you can do that with a monthly offer. You can do that, I believe, with an annual as well. So check it out. Get familiar with the platform. Definitely see how it can help you improve and tighten up your own writing. The other thing that I mentioned, we have a busy month coming up here at AutoCrit. If you haven't yet heard of our upcoming challenge, Gareth, what day does that start? It's the 24th. Is that right?
Ooh, there's a question. Yes. We're running from the 24th to the 31st.
So less than 1 week from today. So this coming up Monday, I've got my calendar over here. Mm-hmm. We are starting a book editing breakthrough challenge that is going to be fantastic. We have never done anything like this before. It is 8 days of intensive guided line editing, coaching from AutoCrit in terms of videos, live streams, homework assignments, because, you know, we are not here to edit your book for you, but we're here to give you those tools and make it easy for you. That'll also come with 14 days of AutoCrit Professional included if you join that challenge. Gareth, do you happen to have a link of where folks can go to find out more about that? I know we have the link in our Facebook group as a post, so feel free to jump in there and look for Book Editing Breakthrough. Gareth, anything you want to add to that?
No, I will have a look here. I'm not sure if we have a short link for that right now, but certainly have a look inside the Facebook group. Or check your email. I think we've also emailed about it if you're on our mailing list.
Email if you're on our mailing list. So
yeah, we should have an email with the link there as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that kicks off. I think registration closes. We have 2 registrations for. We have a VIP registration, which gets you some extra time with the team, and a normal registration, which closes on Sunday. So make sure to get in there this week and have a look if you're interested. It's a great opportunity if you have a manuscript that's kind of, end of the first draft, end of second draft, and just ready for a full-on hardcore polish, because that's what it is. a week of super serious action.
Absolutely rolling up your sleeves, hands on, getting in there and doing the work of the work, and getting that goal of 50 pages of your manuscript. You can do more, but our goal is 50 pages at least, polished, ready to take to that next step. And in addition to that, as always, prizes. So that'll be fun as well. Somebody did mention, someone from our YouTube channel just chimed in, and this is unfortunately really strong on Facebook, right? So the challenge itself will have live streams and videos and chats and a special group in Facebook. And we know that not everybody does Facebook, and we're looking actively for ways to make this more accessible to people who just don't do the Facebook thing. Absolutely understandable. We're really sorry. It is an easy way for us to get this first challenge underway and work out a lot of the kinks and bugs and snafus. So hang in there with us, and for future challenges, maybe we'll be able to open that up a little bit and get it on a more accessible platform, and we'll take it from there. But we appreciate everybody tuning in.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great time. Go check out What's the Score with Brenda Jackson, and compare your work to Brenda Jackson in the AutoCrit platform.
And I will have a teaser for next month's author out to you soon. I do not yet know who it is.
It's a teaser for every week.
We're all being teased right now.
Yes, we are. Oh, I see the link being posted, and we'll post the link for that book editing breakthrough challenge as well. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We will see you soon.